So we've got something different for today's segment, ladies and gentlemen. This is a bit of a segment that kind of hits close to home for me as a fellow New Yorker who lives in the giant shithole that is New York City. It's not that much of a shithole. It's fucking expensive as fuck to live here, but hopefully it's getting better as Mamdani continues being the mayor of New York here. That being said, though, there's a controversy that stirred up regarding a coffee shop. Yeah, this is Poetica. It's a chain that exists throughout New York. It originally started in 2020 by this guy named Parviz, I believe, and he was an immigrant from Uzbekistan, I believe. And they were a chain that originally started around Carroll Gardens, and then they moved all over New York. So there's some in Williamsburg, there's one in Manhattan, there's a couple down below Prospect Park and stuff. They're like all over the New York map. So yeah, they've gotten around, and they actually have some pretty decent coffee, if I do say so myself. I've had my fair share of Poetica. I actually, fun fact guys, going into this, I actually briefly worked at Poetica not that long ago. So little fun fact, guys, for you there for me doing this. No, that's not a joke. I actually briefly worked at this at one of the cafe locations. I'm not going to say which one that I worked at for my personal safety, but I did briefly work here. So this is actually a very interesting segment to see that this they really fucking blew up for what transpired. So let's get into what the controversy is. So this is the Lorimer Street location for Poetica. And this is where the incident happened. So that's incredible. Wow. We got the pride flags. We got the support for Palestine. We got everything. It's a beautiful thing. You know, we love left-leaning shit here. Anyway, Dan Goldman, who's a congressman, Democratic congressman, he stopped in Poetica at the Lorimer Street location. And at first, it went well. You know, he had a friendly rapport with the barista, and he had I think the barista was kind enough to let his 7-year-old daughter use the bathroom, and it all seemed to go nice and well, you know? So they had a friendly interaction. He bought a coffee there. They walked out. Everything was all fine and dandy until the official Poetica account decided to make a fucking Instagram post pretty much calling him out for his stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict. And yeah, in case you don't know, I mean, obviously Poetica is very, very left-leaning chain, and they are obviously going to side more with Palestinians, which makes sense. But I decided to do, like, I say research, quote-unquote, but I kind of cheated. I used Grok to try to understand Dan Goldman's perspective on the Israel-Palestine conflict a little bit more. Yeah, so I kind of cheated. I said, what has Dan Goldman said about Israel in the past? You know, basically, apparently Goldman was in Israel with his family during the Hamas attacks, sheltered from rockets in Tel Aviv. And he has criticized Netanyahu and the Israeli government. So, I mean, he voted for Israel aid packages and resolutions supporting Israel's right to defend itself. Okay, I mean, like, listen, he's also opposed the BDS list movement and everything. Like, listen, from what I've read here, you can pause to read what Grok spat out. But from what I'm reading here, is that, yes, he has pushed back against Netanyahu and what he's doing with the Israeli government, but I also don't really, like, some could argue that he's not doing it enough, and that there are some instances where he downplays the crimes that Israel is committing onto Palestine. Like, he'll debate the semantics about whether or not what is or isn't happening is a genocide in Palestine, which I don't really think that... I always hate the semantics debates about whether or not what Israel is doing is or isn't a genocide, because either way, what they're doing is fucking terrible. They are committing war crimes onto Palestine. So it would be one thing if Dan Goldman was like, hey, listen, I think Israel has a right to exist. Obviously, I don't support what Netanyahu is doing to Palestinians. I don't support all the war crimes. Like, that would be fine in one thing, but, like, getting into, like, this weird semantics about whether what is or what isn't a genocide, it kind of makes it seem like you're downplaying what's happening with the Israel-Palestine conflict. So that's where I stand with that. I mean, if he said Israel has a right to exist, that would have been one thing. But absolutely saying that what's happening is not a genocide, it's like, come on, dude. Like, there are other things you could be productively talking about. Anyway, I guess if Poetica or the owner just looked at this guy and said, yeah, you know what, we don't want to serve this guy. We don't really like where he stands with the Israel-Palestine conflict. We're not a huge fan of it. We don't want to serve this guy anymore. That would be fine. In fact, if they just handled it that way, that would be the end of it. But because they decided to make this social media post on Instagram, that is where... This is an example of not everything needs to be public online. Like, I think that Poetica posting this on their social media platforms is extremely bad optics. But let's read what they have to say, right? Like, before we get ahead of ourselves. Hey, Representative Dan Goldman, we see that you stopped by our shop today for a coffee. Do you see how it doesn't taste like genocide juice? Wow. Or are you still having a hard time telling the difference? See, here at Poetica, we don't serve racists, fascists, homophobes, genocide enablers, or anyone in between. Too bad we didn't recognize you right away, or we would have turned you away. We issued you a refund. We don't need your money. It's probably coming from AIPAC anyways. Enjoy your loss on Tuesday. Don't ever come to Poetica. So... yeah, listen, I think that posting this on social media was a bad fucking idea. Regardless of how you feel about Dan Goldman as a person, like, I think that what he's, like, some of his stances on Israel-Palestine are a massive downplay of what Israel's war crimes are to Palestinians. So I'm not going to take to a liking to him as much. But you did not need to post this on social media. I think if Poetica just looked at this and went, yeah, going forward, if he ever stops by again, just don't ever serve him again. Just be like, yeah, we're not going to serve you or whatever. Or, like, we're not a huge fan of, like, what you've done. Like, you could be open to him in person. The fact that you decided to make a social media post about it is the part that I think really fucked them over optically. Like, you go to the official Poetica Coffee website, it says 7 cafes, 7 mahalas across Brooklyn and the East Village, rooted in Uzbek tradition, where the guest is sacred, the books are unbanned, and the door is open to everyone. Well, clearly the door was not open to Mr. Dan Goldman in this case. I mean, which is fine, by the way. Like, that's your prerogative. Like, if you don't want to open the door to him, don't open the door to him. Don't fucking make a social media post about it, though. Like, that part that's the unnecessary part. Pretty sure Dan Goldman did respond to this. This is a second Instagram account. I'm sorry to see this post. The barista could not have been nicer to my 7-year-old daughter and me, allowing her to use the bathroom even though we had not purchased anything. I made sure to buy a coffee in return for her kindness. I hope you at least make sure she gets the tip that she deserved. So, that's probably good. I mean, if he gave her a big fat tip. Not in that way, guys. All right, chill out. Chill the fuck out. Stop. Get your mind out of the gutter, please. But if he gave her a large tip, hopefully they made sure she at least had the option to keep it, unless she didn't want it anymore and she doesn't support this guy, which I guess is also fair, but that should be her prerogative. The official Poetica Instagram account replies, "We have some of the nicest, most amazing people working with us. It was actually her idea to refund the tips while I suggested we refund everything. Dan, I have you here. You mentioned your 7-year-old, and I want to mention my 6-year-old son. Because of your stance and the way you constantly dehumanize people like me and subsequently my son, we as Brooklynites, that's what they call us here? Bro, I've been living in Brooklyn, New York all fucking 24 years of my life. We're Brooklynites? That's what they called us? That's news to me. And your constituents will be voting for someone who actually cares for us. We need a representative who will make our neighborhood safe for your daughter and my son alike." Okay, that's fair enough. Listen, if that's the stance they want to take, fair enough. But, again, this didn't need to be a public matter. Because... like, ultimately, and I keep bringing up optics. I showed you their website earlier. Poetica has 7 locations as of right now. They've had a couple of other locations. I think they had one in Greenpoint, and I think they had one around Caton Avenue. But those locations are no longer available. But, like, Poetica has more than one location. And if you're posting stuff like this, you are fucking over your business badly. because you're going to stop people from coming to your cafe. Like, obviously, people that are going to be more sympathetic with Jewish people or Israel in general are going to stop coming to your cafe as a result of this. That you could give them ammunition to say, oh, wow, Poetica is anti-Semitic. I don't think Poetica is anti-Semitic, personally. I think that they're just advocating for Palestinians because they are objectively being oppressed by Israel. I don't think that they are. But you give them ammunition to say that when you get involved in situations like this. Especially with how big this situation became. You have tons of fucking media articles being posted about this situation. And the backlash got so heavy that Poetica deleted their fucking Instagram account. So it's just bad optics overall. This is like a really bad way to optically handle stuff. You can still support the LGBTQ community. You should, obviously. You could still call out Israel for their war crimes. But when you get involved in drama like this, or when you get involved in situations against politicians, you fuck over yourselves. You also fuck over the baristas that are working for you. Because, like, if your business doesn't do as well as it should be doing, you're going to make... That makes it so that they can't make as much money, they can't make as many tips, and you're fucking them over as well. So that's why I think making this a public matter was really a bad move on Poetica's part. That was just a terrible move optically. Whoever did that idea, sorry, you're going to have to take the... Whoever ran the social media account during that time, you're going to have to take the L for that. That's just like the reality of the situation. We'll just read one of the many articles that's being said about this situation. A New York coffee shop said on Instagram that Representative Dan Goldman should never return because of his pro-Israel views. The extent of his pro-Israel views is kind of a downplay of what's happening in the Israel-Palestine conflict. The post came just ahead of Tuesday's primary elections in New York, where Goldman faces a challenge from former city comptroller Brad Lander in one of the most notable primary races in the state. Both candidates are Jewish, and Goldman has been endorsed by pro-Israel lobbying groups J Street and the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, while Lander is being backed by progressives like New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani and Senator Bernie Sanders. In a harshly worded post, Poetica alluded to Goldman's stance in support of Israel, which progressives like Lander and the human rights groups have strongly criticized over the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon, and mentioned genocide in AIPAC. These are fair criticisms. Do you see how it doesn't taste like genocide juice? The genocide juice part makes me kind of cringe a little bit. It's like, brother, like, we get it. Like, he does downplay it being a genocide, and he also he supports Israel to a fault. And he probably doesn't push back on Netanyahu as much as he could. But, like, calling it genocide juice, like, I don't know. Like, it just kind of sounds corny. I feel like you're downplaying the genocide yourself by saying genocide juice, but whatever. The post said, accompanied by what appeared to be security image of Goldman looking at his phone while he was at the register. See, here at Poetica, we don't serve racists, fascists, homophobes, genocide enablers, or anyone in between. The post continued according to screenshots that circulated on social media and were reported by several news outlets. Too bad we didn't recognize you right away, or we would have turned you away. The post said the shop had issued Goldman a refund, saying that the money was probably coming from AIPAC anyways. Enjoy your loss on Tuesday. Don't ever come back to Poetica. Goldman wrote in response that he was sorry to see the post. We already read most of this. Okay, so this is just the one of many articles that's talking about this situation. I just want to know, is there anything else? Oh yeah, here we go. Poetica Coffee and its founder, Parviz Muhammad, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Muhammad Kulov. I'm sorry if I butcher the pronunciation of your last name, Parviz. Don't kill me. Could not be reached for a comment. Well, yeah, because the Poetica Instagram account deactivated because of all the backlash that they were getting. Again, the optics of this situation for Poetica is really bad overall. On its website, Poetica Coffee says it goes by credo that whoever walks through the door is treated with unconditional dignity. Again, clearly not in this situation, which, whatever, their prerogative, but still. Goldman has said he does not take corporate PAC money, including from AIPAC. Donor discloses, however, show that he does receive money from individuals through the lobbying group. In an interview on CNN, Goldman said it was crazy to be accused of supporting genocide by someone who did not know him, adding that what is going on in the Middle East is horrific. I mean, that's a pretty safe thing to say, that what's going on in the Middle East is horrific. Yeah, like, it's a very safe comment to make. Now, I may disagree as to whether or not there's a genocide. I see, again, that's the problem, is that, like, you're you're playing semantics about whether it is or it isn't a genocide. When you do that, that comes across like you're downplaying what's happening to them being terrible. That's the problem. I don't know if Dan Goldman understands that, but like that's what it comes across as. Like it comes across as like a spit in the face to them. I still don't think Poetica should have made the fucking post, but like, come on now. You're not exactly making it easy to be sympathetic to you here. But come on, we're better than this, and we need to be better than this. The Justice Department's Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmit Dillon, is that how you say her name? Said on X that Poetica's actions were potentially illegal. Is it because they denied the customer from being served because they were Jewish? I don't think that's entirely true. I think that, like, obviously the narrative is going to get spun out of control. I did see from many sources that the mainstream media is reporting that the Department of Justice is investigating Poetica. That is also disproportionate. That's also very harsh to send the fucking DOJ to investigate him. You have the DOJ investigating fucking coffee shop chains and caring more about coffee shop chains than Trump being a fucking pedophile in the Epstein client list. What a fucking timeline we live in, where the Department of Justice can care more about a fucking coffee shop chain than a pedophile ring by rich people that's been going on for decades and that's been covered up for decades. Isn't that fucking insane? So this is just a quick thing. Mayor Zoran Mamdani apparently heard of the situation. This situation got so fucking big that even Zoran Mamdani talked about this going on. This is pretty insane stuff overall, so we can see what Mamdani has to say about it. It's a pretty short clip by the New York Post. I'm not usually a fan of the New York Post. They're a little bit Trump mind-fucked, usually. But, I mean, this is the only clip I could find of Mamdani saying this, so...
Can I also ask on something else? What happened with Dan Goldman at Poetica Cafe yesterday? What do you think about what transpired there? Do you think it's a kind of okay way for someone to express political disagreements with his views on Israel?
I have many a political disagreement with Congressman Goldman when it comes to his votes and his views on Israel. I think that what we saw online goes beyond.
Okay, I mean... Like, Zoran Mamdani gave a very safe response to this. He kept it simple. He was like, yeah, like what happened with Dan Goldman, I don't agree with Dan Goldman at all, and I think his views on Israel are bad, but also what happened with Dan Goldman was taken too far. It's a very safe response from an optics standpoint. See, Zoran Mamdani is a good lesson on how to handle your optics better, Poetica. Take some notes if you really like Mamdani as your guy, which you should, by the way. Mamdani is pretty promising, if I do say so myself. Anyway, this is a very interesting situation. It's a lot shorter than a lot of my other segments. It's also very different compared to some of the other segments that I've done previously. But this situation blew up so quickly. Tons of mainstream media articles were talking about it. And I thought it was interesting to cover because I think that overall, this situation is a very good example of what not to do when it comes to your optics on situations. This is a very good situation and a very good example to explain, hey, you know, not everything needs to be like a performance piece on social media. Not everything needs to be posted online to tons of people to create situations where controversy is stirred up. Because now the owner is in a situation where the fucking DOJ is going after them. I don't agree with the DOJ investigating Poetica. That's fucking harsh and very disproportionate. But again, this is why when you're a big business, you have to care about your fucking optics better. Like, holy shit, dude. Why did anyone, whoever was running that fucking social media account that day, why did you think it was a good idea to post that on social media? Like, honestly, why? Why did you think that that would be an overall net positive for your fucking business? Like, it wouldn't. You know, ultimately, it was gonna be controversy one way or another. And obviously, I don't think anyone who was running that account or the owner himself was expecting the controversy to get as big as it fucking did. It's just fucking crazy. And the fact that I used to work at this chain is pretty insane as well. It's kind of surreal.